Okay, welcome to the July 28th, 2021 Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with commission members, city staff, members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. Roll call. I will like to introduce myself, Aurora Brosnan, Commissioner. The staff and commission members present. Commissioners present include Jennifer Baskin, Vice Chair, Peter Diepenbrock, Commissioner Peter, sorry, is Peter here? Peter Joshua? No, sorry. Apologies for Peter Joshua and Dana Payne. Present is Commissioner David Thomas. We also, from the staff, have Library and Community Services Director Sean Reinhardt, Assistant Library Services Director Nick Segda, and Recreation Supervisor Todd Zio. Have I got everyone there? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Staff Liaison Nick, would you please provide instructions to the Parks and Recreation Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Sure. At various points throughout the meeting, the chair is going to call for public comment. A member of the public, if you're here and you'd like to make a public comment on an item when it's called, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, which is at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're dialing in, you can use *9 to engage the raise hand function. For members of the commission, please keep your cameras on and your microphones off until you are recognized by the chair. And it looks like I have one raised hand right now, but I'm not sure if they're raising hand for public comment. We're almost getting to that point.
We'll just move on to the public commentary then. Under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed in the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. And Nick, we have a public comment?
Looks like we have a couple of hands raised right now. If a member of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please use that raise hand feature on the Zoom screen. This is for commenting on items not on the agenda for tonight. And if you're dialing in, use that *9 function on your phone. So all the hands went back down, so I'm assuming they have comments to make. Wait, here's one. No, wait. I saw Commissioner Joshua in there. Peter, you're logged into the attendee part. There should be a panelist link in the agenda. And you should have gotten a link from Zoom. So I can send you that link directly here in just a second. We'll get you over onto the panelist side. So it doesn't look like there is any public comment at this time.
Thank you. Okay, regular business, section D. Under regular business, the Parks and Recreation Commission considers recommendation from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. Item D1 is accept the Parks and Recreation Commission minutes for the meeting of June 23rd, 2021. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before taking public comment? No. Staff liaison Nick, do we have any public comment on this item?
Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on the minutes from the last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, please use that raise hand function in Zoom or press *9 on your phone now. And I do not see any public comment on this item.
Okay, would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second motion?
I will second that.
Thank you. And Nick?
I will call the roll now to see how the other commissioners vote. Commissioner Diepenbrock, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Commissioner Joshua, how do you vote? He gave a thumbs up. And Chair Brosnan, how do you vote?
Yes.
The motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to nothing.
Okay, item D2, Aquatics, excuse me, program update. We will now have a presentation, and I believe it is Tim Sheeper.
So Tim Sheeper and Steve Young from Menlo Swim and Sport are both here to make the presentation. For members of the public, we'll have the presentation first, and then the chair will call for comment. So if you want to make public comment, we'll call for public comment at that time. Tim, take it away. Let me pull up the PowerPoint here.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Good evening, commissioners and staff. Delighted to be here tonight to talk about aquatics. I'm always excited to talk about what's happening at the pool, and we have a presentation that we're just waiting to go online here. Then I'll start. I'll start stepping through the slides.
Sorry to leave you hanging there. I had it and it went away, so I'm gonna.
It's all right.
My apologies, everyone.
Well, I'll just start and we'll bring the slides on. So basically what I've, the way I put this report together was, there it is. Okay, why don't we move to that third slide then. So the way the report was constructed was to go off of 4 time periods, how a kind of a conglomeration of how the business operated in the past, and it's kind of like averages over the past 15 years, and then how we operated during the pandemic, which was the about 13, 14 months that we were operating in the pandemic operations. And then the present just consisted of the month of July. So we kind of reported on numbers and findings from just July of 2021. And then forecasts of what the forecast is going to be, kind of short term, midterm, and probably even into the long term. Okay, next slide. And then I just, before we get started and looking at all the pie charts and bar graphs and whatnot, just wanted to share with anybody listening and commissioners of operating the pool and operating this asset for the community. There's dozens of decisions that we make on a daily basis. And sometimes they're simple decisions, and sometimes they're more complex, and a lot of head scratching and debate go on. And then everybody in our organization is making decisions based off of these 5 tenets, which is our 5 core values, which are the first one is safety. So first and foremost, just the safety of everybody in the using the facility, staff and is included. Servants are just we are here to serve others. Warrior spirits, just the the desire and fight to succeed. Trust, so trusting in each other, and being straightforward so the community can trust what we're saying and what we're doing. And then we are running a pool, so it's all about having fun and being friendly with people. So those are the way we make our decisions and operate our operation. So next slide. So it's this is just the programs that are offered at our facility, and you could see there's a wide spectrum of things that we offer at Burgess. That is it's a unique situation. For most pools, they offer maybe half to maybe 2/3 of what we offer, but with so many varied programs like an underwater hockey triathlon team, these are just different and really extensive programming that we have. And you could see that we've kind of reduced that during the pandemic and the present, and then the intention is to bring back almost everything. Next slide. And this just gives you the hours per week, so it lets you know what's in the pool the most. And if you just call your attention to the lap swim, so you could see this is a number of hours per week that lap swim is available to the community. And you can see that right now in the present, we're the pool is being dominated by lap swims. And in the summertime, we have the summer camps, and so that's also highly used. But all these other programs, they're just using it sparingly. Next slide. And this just gives you a bar graph of what that chart showed you. So you could see that a lap swim is a little bit higher than normal now, and you can see that open swim is improving, but the last one you can see is that swim school right now is not happening. It's non-existent, and we can go into that a little bit later. Next slide. And this is just the participation numbers. So you could see this is the past is 2019. That's what we had either per season or per month, or the passes that we were providing for the community. And you could see during the pandemic, a lot of things were either at zero or they declined. And in the present, we're building up, but you can see where is the open swim drop-ins. So open swim is usually the open swim during the summertime is like when the pool is being used the most, and there's a lot of people coming in, and that's where we get a majority of those 20,000 visits per year are happening during those 10 to 12 weeks. And those numbers are quite low at this point in the present. Next slide. And just thought we'd add in what happened at Bellhaven during the year. So there might be questions on that. and you could see that the drop in lap swim increased dramatically during the pandemic. But as you well know, that Bellhaven is offline at this time for the renovation. So it went from 2,300 per year up to 8,000 during the pandemic. So it was great to see that pool being utilized to its fullest, and so many comments that people were delighted about the facility that they had never been to, but the pandemic allowed them to go there. Next slide, please. And the participation numbers, and these are the averages per month again. And I'm not sure what this one related to, so let's just move to the next slide. Program participation numbers. This is for instruction. So this is an add-on. So you could see that this is showing the swim lessons. So historically, we had a real large swim school. So we would give anywhere about 1,000 to 1,200 swim lessons per week to the community at Burgess. And you can see during the pandemic and in present, it's down to 0. And in the short term, we're going to have to build that back slowly. So it's going to be probably in more than 300-400 per week. But that program was hit the hardest. And personal instruction. So these are just one-on-one lessons that are happening. And this was just, the swim school is offline, obviously, because we couldn't get instructors into the water to be close to children and handle kids who are unsafe in the water. So they had to, these one-on-one instructors had to be instructing from the pool deck behind a mast and giving verbal instructions. And so that's why the numbers are down. And so that's the instruction part. So next slide. Program participation in Menlo Park camps, our Camp Menlos. And the reason I put this slide up is to show that our camps have been in operation. Normally this is per season. It was about 1,250 kids per season, per the summer season, were coming into our camps. And now we're more in that 400 to 500 range. And the reason I put this on is because this is where we have been able to give kids swim lessons. We've been able to bring on enough staff to be camp counselors and enough staff to put some swim instructors in the water. So children in the community who are water unsafe are still be able to get swim instruction in the camps that we offer, but not just in the swim school. So next slide. This is just the month of July for 2019, the pandemic year of 2020, this year, and then into the future. And you could see the difference in lap swim drop-ins, where during the pandemic it was very high. The reason it's gone down in the present is because a lot of people have gone into memberships, and membership for us is just where you you purchase a monthly pass to use the pool. So it's just more cost effective than the daily drop-ins. But what you could also see from this slide is that the open swim drop-ins are significantly down from what they've been in the past for July. And we've had the pool open quite a few hours during the day, and we've slotted in a bunch of open swim hours, and we've just found that families have chosen really not to bring their little children to the pool like we thought they would. So this is our learning over the past 3 weeks from July 5th when we opened till present. Our assumptions of people rushing back to the pool to enjoy summer and splash in the pool is not playing out like we thought it would. Next slide, please. And this just shows you in a visual just what I talked about. And you could see on the open swim on the right. Next slide. So BBAF stands for Beyond Barriers Athletic Foundation, and this is our scholarship foundation that's been set up. And this is for youth to be able to take swim lessons and at a scholarship fee. So the family pays $5 for a swim lesson, and these are the number of lessons that we've been able to give this month. Next slide. And this is the fee structure, where you could see the fees that we've had in the past. And I guess we could just focus on the lap swim drop-ins, where in the past it's been $7 to $8 as R and NR as resident, non-resident. And then during the pandemic, it was $10 for everybody. And that was mainly because we were doing it online and we didn't have the capability to define who is a resident, non-resident. So everybody paid the same fee. So presently, the numbers have reduced slightly from 9 to 10, and as we progress and we get our numbers back, or we get our volume up higher, so we project that we'll be able to drop the prices again from to closer to what they were, $8 to $9. And open swim follows that same line as well. Next slide. This just shows you a little bit about our workforce and the total volume of people that we employ to provide the services. In the past, you could see we're in that 180 range. During the pandemic, we were down to 50. In present, we're back to 128, but that's a bit deceiving because a lot of those staff members are brought on as camp counselors, and they're working a very short period, and we'll probably lose another 40 to 50 of them as they go off to school or back to high school or back to college in the next couple of weeks. And so we're going to have another dip, and then we're going to have to do another round of hiring just to get to a level where we can keep the doors open and have enough lifeguards. And our next round of hiring we're focusing on swim instructors so we can bring our swim school back online. Next slide. And this just shows the kind of a historical snapshot of the average starting wage of our operations from back in 2009 and how it progressed to currently $16.50 an hour. And then I just put alongside that what lap swim costs, a resident cost was in 2009 and what it is currently. And you could see the progressions here to the right. Next slide. And this just shows how we communicate to the public. So there's the macro communications. So to the vast community is a lot, and mostly through our websites, and a lot of people get information and changes about our organization and the opening of the pool and programs through our newsletters. And then there's a presence in our social media, and then a lot of signage and things like that. And then if we drill down into our programming, there's a lot of the micro communications. So these are from coaches to players, or coaches to swimmers, or there's a lot of Google groups for internal communications. So, you know, it doesn't a day go by where we're not working on some sort of a communication loop to either the greater community or to one of our specialty groups. Next slide. And this was a survey that we did at the end of the year, the beginning of this year, kind of that transition through December, January. We wanted to know what people were thinking and what we needed to improve upon during the pandemic. And one of the things that we were really surprised about is that we got more respondents than we ever had for any of the surveys that we sent out in the previous 10 plus years. There's a lot of people who use our programs and use our facility. Normally, you know, we have like 500,000 visits per year, and we would still only get 250 people responding. But this year we got 314, and about half of those people were residents. And the pie chart just shows that there was a representation from each of the subgroups that we have, but a majority from the lap swimmers. And next slide. Overall, this was the most respondents that we ever had, and the highest ratings that we ever got for our services. So that was a wonderful silver lining for us during pandemic operations, which was a really difficult time for not only the community coming in, but for our staff adapting to this, as you can imagine. But the silver lining is like what people were just pleased and happy with what we were able to provide for them. Next slide. And the things that they wanted to really improve, and the biggest gripe that they had was when the reservations came online, and it was midnight, and so people would stay up late to reserve their lanes, and that was a bit of a challenge for most people, but something that we couldn't change with the software and the provider that we had. And they wanted more programming. They wanted us to give them more and more time and so on. They just wanted they just wanted more water time. Next slide. Yeah, so that pretty much sums it up. We're just, we're honored that we're able to serve the community, and we work hard every day to make it happen. We have a solid core staff that has been in their roles from anywhere from 7 to 20 years, and committed to what they do. And so this just also shows that and states that I just think what we're doing is every day we open the pool, it's like opening in our laboratory. And we're just experimenting with our programming and our timing to know and figure out how people are using the pool and how we need to adjust. And I think it's going to be, we're going to have to be very flexible and nimble as we go forward in the next quarter or half year, or even to the full year as we get back to a more normal, I shouldn't say normal, but more traditional operational settings. And as things come back online, we get excited about it. And I know we don't always operate as fast as some of the people in the community would like us to, but we also are very focused on offering a premium service and a quality service. And we never want to rush into things and then have to retrace our steps and fix it. So thanks for listening. I hope I didn't go on too long. So any questions?
Thank you, Tim.
For sure.
Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before taking public comment?
If I may, Madam Chair, I do first of all want to thank Tim, Mr. Sheeper, for giving us that overview of the program. And I would just also remind the commissioners, although you know this and also calls to the public's attention, that there's some additional information, including everything you just saw, is in the written staff report that was published along with the agenda. So please do have a look at that if you haven't already. And of course, this presentation, the slides will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Sheep, I do have one question.
Sure.
With respect to the swim school, you seem to be dropping to about 30% of what you were over the past 15 years, and you're looking forward to July 2022. Why would you only expect this to be at 30% instead of 100%?
When we had 1,200 students in the school per week, we had around 25 to 30 staff members who we had, and it took years to bring them up to a level that they could teach proficiently and provide a good service. And so right now we have 0. And so we have to go from 0 to 10 to 20 to 25. And there might be more demand in the community, but it's going to take a while for us to get back. So that forecast is, yeah, like you said, for maybe the next year. And I think it's just going to take a while because it took us years to get to 1,200. If you're looking back to 2007 and 2008 when we first started, we weren't hitting those numbers. So it's a realistic, it's something that I think we could realistically hit, because if we can have we could bring on maybe 10, 12, 15 instructors in the next year.
what would be the maximum number of instructors that you would look to? And in other words, if we talk about past pre-pandemic, how many instructors did you have?
Yeah, that was when we were at 25 to 30.
Okay, and so you're thinking you can get back up to about 12 by July of next year?
Yeah, if not a little more. Yeah, 12 to 15 instructors, right? It's hard to say. Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much.
sure.
Is there any other comment from the commission or staff? I wanted to add that, Tim, I appreciate how difficult it must have been to keep a swimming pool business open during a pandemic. So congratulations for keeping yourself afloat. I've also been involved in projects where it required scheduling a large amount of staff with special qualifications, so I understand how challenging that can be. One of the, some of the comments that I've seen in the CCIN that is recurring frequently is around the accessibility to warm water during daytime hours for disabled and elderly
Yes.
community.
Yeah.
And I see that I'm making an assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, that water therapy is what that population would typically engage in.
Right.
And one of the comments, I think, referred to the hours being pre 9 a.m. for those members of the community. And I was wondering if you could clarify if that's correct. What hours are set aside for those members of the community?
Right. Okay. So we have water exercise, and this is, I'm talking pre-pandemic. We had water exercise and water therapy. So we started out with water exercise, which was more assertive, more aggressive, more movement, high heart rates. And the timing was always 8 to 9 a.m. Right. That was the previous timing, and that's the current timing that we have. And the intention is to build out our water exercise programming first, because it serves the largest portion of the community. The next program that we'll bring on is water therapy, which is slower moving, rehabilitation, stretching. And there was a smaller population in demand for that, so we were serving fewer people. It was Tuesdays and Thursdays, so it was twice a week, and there was 2 different classes. And so we, in our current schedule, only have enough time and space to serve our water exercise, because what we have going on is our swim camps, which are our swim lessons. And we want to really protect those kids coming into the facility, and they're coming in between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And so they're using the whole instructional pool for their lessons. And we didn't want to mix populations, the older population and these young kids. And plus we have a staffing issue too. Right now we only have 1 water exercise instructor. And so we're working on building our water exercise staff from 1, and we want to build it up to 4 to 5 to 6, like we've had in the past. So it's I guess the question is, why aren't we moving fast enough? Why aren't we getting this water exercise and water therapy up online quick enough? And I guess those are the two reasons, because right now we're focusing on swim camps and swim lessons for the youth for 12 and under. And we don't want a lot of mix because those are unvaccinated. And we have right now we have one instructor.
Just to add one thing, all of our camps right now are working in pods. So they don't even mix with themselves. They have separate groups of kids that are working within. So they can't mix with the general public. And that's why we've blocked out time for them too, just to caveat.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thanks. So sorry, Steve. So meaning that you've got different groups of kids that are in pods that stay physically sort of separated from each other?
Right. Yeah, we have 5 groups at a time within the facility. They're all in separate areas. Then they go swim in a section of the pool while they get swim lessons within that pod, and then they switch and another group goes in, and then they go play games and stuff on the lawn and stuff like that.
So, so at what point would you see making more time available and having staff to bring water therapy and elderly and disabled people back into the pools? I think there's been a lot of feedback from the public on that. Quite
Sure.
a bit. All of the comments that I've seen around the pool, that's the most that I see. And the fact that elderly and disabled people are often isolated and rely on public transportation, I think it would be hard for them to get to a swimming pool before 9 a.m.
Well, on August 20th, camps are over and they'll have the whole pool back for the rest of the year until summer hits again. So they have, it's a 10-week period in total where, those programs are going on, and they kind of have time before the camps, after the camps, and then on the weekends they have, like the whole weekend to use the pool as well. I know it's not ideal, but there's been details with COVID going on that we have to kind of like massage the whole time, to make it work for all sides of the community. So shortly they'll have the pool all back, and we'll be able to add a lot more programming back in as we kind of move forward. I hope that makes sense.
You're saying after August
20th, I believe, is the last day of camps. Yeah.
Programming in?
Yeah. I can confirm the date exactly here if you want.
Yeah, August 20th is the last day of Menlo Park camps.
Right.
It's not to say that on that Monday, August 23rd, we're going to have a full water therapy and water exercise program, because again, we are limited by the staff. We currently only have one instructor. So all the instructors that we've had in the past are unavailable to do the water exercise. Everybody that we've checked in with so far does not have the availability to teach water exercise. And so that's the first program that we are focusing on, because that serves the largest number of seniors who want an exercise program. And so that's what we want to build first. So we are recruiting, we're talking to people. This is a highly specialized position, and it's not something that is as easy to find as maybe a lifeguard or a swim instructor or a front desk staff member.
Okay, so, okay, understood that that's a difficult situation to get people back on board after.
Yes, we would like nothing more than to right now have 5 days a week or even 6 days a week and offer those classes, that's something that, you know, we want and we're striving for. But, you know, right now we've just come up empty.
So would you say that you're aiming to have get those programs back on board as a priority?
100%. So the next round is trying to bring on water exercise, which we're doing right now, and swim instructors. So we're hoping to hire swim instructors and get our swim school back online in the fall. We need to hire and train. So the hiring process takes some time, and then the training process takes some time. So if we found somebody today, it's still about, you know, could be 3 to 4 weeks before we could give our first lesson. Whereas if we found a water exercise instructor who's already certified and ready to go, they could start in a week or two.
Okay. If there aren't any more questions from the commission, Nick, do we have any public comment on this topic?
Sure. If at this time you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use that raise hand function in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. I'll recognize you and then allow you to speak. And it looks like we have one commenter at this time. The first commenter is Diane Walter. Diane, you can unmute yourself and make your comment now.
Hi, thank you. Tim, I wanted to address some of your slides that you were noting that the open swim attendees were down, and that also I noticed that the open swim satisfaction was lower than the other scores that you were getting, the very high scores, which I thought was very impressive. And I just wanted, I suspect that might be due to cost. I have friends who have two very good income parents, and they were complaining about the cost of open swim for a family to go to Burgess. And then you add to that the fact that Bellhaven is now closed for the summer. And so I wonder if the cost isn't prohibiting, you know, our Bellhaven residents from being able to enjoy the swimming pool, because the prices have gone up fairly substantially.
Okay, Dan, is that the end?
Well, I want to put out that the Menlo Park taxpayers are still.
Ms. Walter, your audio is breaking up there on my end.
Okay, sorry. Is it better? No. Yeah, I don't know what to do. What to do about that. Let me try.
It seems like it has cleared up.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, just that since the Menlo Park taxpayers are still paying on the bonds for the swimming pool, is there a way that Menlo Park can help subsidize at least our Bellhaven residents, since their pool is now closed for the summer, so that the kids can enjoy open swim?
So first of all, I think we want to make sure that Ms. Walter gets her 3 minutes or until she's done before chiming in. So I noticed that the timer disappeared.
Okay,
So,
well, I'm done. So
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Chair, just on the question of the city of Menlo Park subsidizing fees or anything of that nature, that would be a conversation to have an action that would need to be taken by the city council as it pertains to how fees are assessed and the nature of the service agreement with Mr. Sheeper and his company. One piece of information that the staff put together that was in the written report that wasn't presented in the presentation, but I do have here, and I can project, because I think it's pertinent to the comment, and I think to what's maybe on some folks' questions that folks have, is a fee comparison with nearby communities. Now, this is something that is noted in the service agreement with Team Sheeper, that the fees should be comparable to similar aquatics programs and services in nearby communities. So we undertook a fee comparison earlier this month. You can see the date there was July 16th. And we looked at Menlo Park and Palo Alto. Now Palo Alto is also run by Mr. Sheeper's company. Burlingame, Campbell, Sunnyvale, Newark. And so at the top are lap swim rates, and then the lower chart are the open swim rates. So you can kind of just see the comparison numbers there to some of the other communities. So just a bit of additional information to inform the Parks and Recreation Commission's conversation here. This is available in the printed staff report that went out with the agenda. So I just wanted to call out that information in case folks hadn't already had a chance to look at it. Thank you.
Is that available to the public, Sean?
Yes, this was included in the staff report that came out with the agenda. So tonight's meeting agenda, there are a few staff reports attached to it, and this is included in the staff report. I think it's page 3 of the staff report for this item.
And is that scheduled for further discussion in a city council meeting next month, is it? The fee schedule for the pool?
The city council most recently, it was in February. I can't recall the specific date. I'd have to look it up. I think it's actually earlier in the staff report. Here, let me take this screen share down so I can get the date without making everyone dizzy by scrolling through the report. February 9th of this year, the city council did review the service agreement with Team Sheeper that was in a public city council meeting. At that time, the city council took no action, effectively leaving the agreement in place, but just allowing the extension clause to take effect, which automatically extends another year with no change to the terms at that time. With the thinking being that it was really just kind of a checkpoint with the current aquatics service delivery, checking in on the agreement, because it renews every August. And if there was to be notice given to go in a different direction or anything like that, there's a clause where that notice would have to happen 6 months in advance. And so February was 6 months in advance of August. So that's why that checkpoint happened at that time.
So is it on the agenda in the city council meeting for August for the council to review that again?
No, that review took place in February. Now, at any point in time, the city council can certainly revisit this topic. It's really the council's prerogative to request another review at any given point in time. There isn't one currently calendared. However, this also is a public meeting and a public discussion and review of one of our recreation programs, this being Aquatics, here at the Parks and Recreation Commission.
And if I could just address that question or statement that Diane Walters had about open swim and satisfaction level. And I think she put forth the assumption that it was cost related. And that is not what we heard predominantly from the from the community. It was availability was the challenge, not the cost. And during the pandemic, we only had open swimming available at Bellhaven because of pool configuration. We did not have open swim available at Burgess. It was predominantly lap swim and youth team usage. So I think that's one thing of why the numbers were down. And as far as price, the price has decreased since the pandemic. And if you think back to that chart, that in the future, there'll be potentially another price drop as we're able to operate with more volume. And like I stated in the slide presentation, the number of people using the pool right now for open swim is virtually zero. We have really nobody using the baby pool. We have the baby pool open Monday through Friday, and we have guards who go for hours on end. There's nobody who shows up to use the baby pool, which normally there would be a number of people coming into the pool. So it's virtually gone empty. So I don't know if it's cost. I don't know if it's availability. I don't know if it's COVID related. And like I stated in my summary, this is part of the laboratory experiment that we're undertaking. We're opening the door and listening to people and see how they vote with their feet. And then we'll make the adjustments moving forward as need be to serve the largest majority of the community.
Commissioner Baskin, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Thank you, Tim. Again, always
welcome.
great to hear your presentation. And I feel like what we have here in Menlo Park with regards to swim and team and open swim and instruction is fantastic. And really enjoy, hearing from you, working with you, and all you provide for us. I was surprised too, to see those open swim and especially the family numbers and really what you're talking about, because I agree with you year after year. Summertime is really a special place there at the pool for families and for people to come. And I would be interested to see feedback or survey data as to whether it is kind of the restrictions that might be placed on families with regards to their older children and participation either with elderly and or other camps that are still kind of requiring certain restrictions for kids who are 12 and under that are still unvaccinated. So I am curious if it's that, and we're still at a point in time where it's this middle stage of there's still restrictions that keep families away from this sort of more openness because they may have older family members or they're in camps that are putting some restrictions on them versus, and I'm very hopeful about things, fast forward to when a vaccine is open for all and a lot of these restrictions may go away or comforts levels may increase, that we can be back to where your forecasts are. So I guess my question here is, and maybe I missed this part, is are we looking to get feedback through maybe more formal survey on some of these questions specifically around the open swim and families and things like that coming back?
Yes, for sure. We do our annual survey. That's more of a formal way to get feedback. We get feedback on a daily basis through our customer service. So we're hearing from people all the time, and it filters to myself and Steve, who is our operations director, and we make adjustments. And I think if we just have to look at more globally what's happening here. We're at the end of July, and really the community is just it's just opened up in what was it, 6 weeks ago. And so I think there is a slower adoption of, okay, let's see what happens. We'll do a little bit now. Is there any danger, or what's the risk if I bring my little children to the pool? So I think it's just, if I was I have children, but they're older now. But if my kids were young, I would probably not choose to bring them to the pool right now, because I just wouldn't want to go through that the risk reward scenario. Yeah, they're going to enjoy it, but am I going to be stressed the whole time of, because I got to take them to the bathroom, or I got to bring them through the locker room or through the lobby? How many people are going to be at the pool? Who's going to be on the deck? So the risk reward is probably challenging people right now. So yeah, and I too, like you, will be interested to see what the people are saying, and once we get the feedback from the community, it'll be good to know what they're thinking right now.
Chair Brosnan, if I can interrupt just for a second, there are still some hands raised for public comment.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Nick.
So the next public commenter is Lynn Bramlett. Ms. Bramlett, you can go ahead and unmute and make your comments to the commission.
Good evening, Commission. So Lynn Bramlett, District 3 resident. I don't personally use the pool, but I've heard concerns from neighbors, and I've read concerns online. And this discussion tonight doesn't include all the concerns that, to me, many of them, I think they ought to be put together and looked into. So I personally belong to the Y with my home Y, the Sequoia YMCA Redwood City. The Y, as I think you know, is a clear nonprofit. And I think they actually run Redwood City's kind of equivalent program. So the main complaint has been talked about here: open pool hours and difficulty of getting access. I didn't fully know that I was doing the comparison right, but it looks like 16% is open with 84% of the time booked. And I was looking at the past figures. And then other people are calling for an outside review of Menlo Park's Aquatics program that would include comparative data and also Team Sheeper's profits. I think a concern is residents are concerned that the public is basically subsidizing a private business. And if so, is that fair enough to the taxpayers? So because these questions continue, it's been going on for years, I think more needs to be done. And even looking at the current model to see, does it meet the city's goals for equity and inclusion and a focus on all residents, seniors, those who don't know how to swim, etc. So a lot of what we heard tonight in the presentation, I would describe as self-reported data and not objective outside review, and it didn't address the concerns. And we didn't actually see the actual survey questions unless I missed something. So I have some related concerns, and one of them was when the city updated its Parks and Recreation Master Plan, Team Sheeper had a seat on the Oversight and Outreach Committee. So I have to raise some questions about this practice. In general, this kind of thing has happened in some other cases like Connect Menlo, where we had a developer on the equivalent committee guiding the zoning changes. And then I have to say, I think charging residents to use the city pool, especially families, seems like a lot. And I think swim lessons should be free, especially for all youth in Bellhaven, because otherwise how are they going to get access to a pool and learn to swim? To me, it's a public safety matter. I mean, I grew up in Southern California where our neighbors had a pool and they arranged to have someone come in and teach us, but private pools aren't so common up here. And I think it'd be good to find out how many of our youth know how to swim, and, you know, getting more exercise is one of our goals too. So I could say more, but my time's up. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you for your comment. Our next public commenter is Tom Prussing. Tom, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and address the commission.
Thank you, commissioners. Hello, Tim. Hello, Steve. First of all, I'd like to say that Tim and Steve had a great staff, and I'm very aware of the challenges that Tim and Steve had to go through the COVID. And Tim and I have had two very lengthy conversations over the phone. I'd like to bring to the commissioner's attention that the needs of the older community and those who have special needs and access to the open swim is not just for them. It's also for families and those for whom the performance pool is just too cold. If you take a look at the total number of lanes available in a given week, open swim represents 72 lanes or 12%. Lap swim is 261 at 43.5%, and class camps and teams are 44.5%. However, Monday through Friday, where you have 330 lanes available, lap swim is 188, 57%. Open is 24 at 7.3, and lessons are 118 at 35.8. So Tim, when you say that, you know, you're surprised that people aren't showing up for open swim, if you take a look at this online schedule that you kindly posted for us, there's not availability. So the participation is going to be less because they're just not available open swim lanes. On Sundays, for example, and Saturdays, people are coming in at 3 o'clock to use the baby pool, and it's closed. It closes prematurely, in my opinion, at 3 o'clock instead of staying open till 5. There is the issue of how do we service the Bellhaven folks who lost their pool. There's the issue that your swim lessons, and you're able to, you get it, so the market will hold it, is at $156 an hour. So who does that serve for lessons? I mean, is that the average person? Can they afford it? A couple of, just because I swim every day, as you know, the lesson lanes being the way they are on the weekends prohibit the open swim from having normal access through the gradual stairs. I used to be an OSHA safety inspector, and I was a facilities manager for 41 years at Stanford. That's a safety hazard, and I think you should take a look at that so that people can have the gradual access. Also, over the last 2 weeks, running on the pool deck has become a problem. Your guards are doing an awesome job to try to prevent it, but folks are ignoring it, both adults and children. So I'd like to recommend that you actually put signage up, very large signage saying no running on a deck for your own liability. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Nick, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you very much for your comment, Mr. Pressing. We have another comment, and the next commenter is Janet Davis. Janet, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can address the commission.
Hi, first of all, Tim did a good job with the pool starting off, and Kathy in customer service is great. But there seems to be a dichotomy between business interests and public service. And the older people who used to go to Shirley's class have all been vaccinated since February and March. They're not going to be a problem with COVID, and yet the kids have not been vaccinated. I went to the first aquasize class and there were 30 some people in the class. The drop-in rate was $20. The lap swim rate drop-in was $8. So people were in the lap swim and then ducking under the lines to get into the aquasize class. And I was very distressed to see 3 people in wheelchairs who were obviously not appropriate for that class. The pricing structure, I think, is not correct. There used to be 6 water therapy classes a week, and I saw on one of the slides that it was $150 a month. I got charged $69 when I was going, so I think that's wrong. 30 people in the aquafit class is too many, and it's dangerous. I only saw 1 lifeguard when I was there, which is not enough. There's no ADA door on the entry to the pool, which is another problem. And I'd like to know why the Palo Alto Stanford kids get to use the pool when they can use the Avery pool at Stanford. And at one time, the foothill classes had adaptive classes at Burgess. And I want to know what's happening when Bellhaven is closed. Where are those kids going to go? That's a lot of questions, but I hope you can give me some answers. I particularly want to have Shirley come back and do the water therapy classes. And water therapy isn't just for old people. It's for athletes like Tim also, who sprain muscles, and for pregnant women. So you can't just say it's for old people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Ms. Davis. At this point, are there any more folks who want to make a public comment on this item? Please use that raise hand function or *9 if you're a call-in listener. Seeing no more calls for public comment, turn it back over to you, Chair Brosnan.
Nick or maybe Sean, what would be a way of furthering this discussion so that we can take into account some of the concerns that people have around several that were just mentioned, the pricing, the equity. We've got a note to look at that I think we could review. And is it worth setting up like a study group to have a look at these considerations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also thanks to all the public commenters who either shared their observations and concerns this evening, as well as in notes that had been sent to like the City Council email list, and in some cases directly to either me or I believe probably some comments have been sent to Mr. Sheeper and his organization. So thank you for all of that. The purpose of tonight's item is to get an update on the current status of the program, in particular how the pandemic impacted it. What do things look like right now as we're kind of emerging from the pandemic, but as many have observed, we're not quite out of the woods yet. And then kind of what the outlook is for the future. So really an update from the program, and also an opportunity for members of the public to kind of see that update and make their comments. So I would say a good next step from here is we did hear some very good and valid comments that are worthy of some follow-up this evening. And so what I would recommend to the commission is for staff to bring back next month a little more detailed kind of analysis and explication in response to kind of what we've heard tonight, because you know, we certainly want to be responsive to that, but I think it would benefit most from having a little bit of time and effort put into some of these issues they would need some a little bit of research and a little bit of explication in kind of like a report format and a presentation format, because there's a number of issues that were raised. So that would be my recommendation, is to come back next month when we've had the benefit of some of that legwork being done.
Okay, do we need to take an action on that, or shall we just put that on the next agenda?
Well, I note that later in the agenda, as you do each month, you do a review of your upcoming agenda calendar. So, at that point in time, you could just calendar this for an upcoming meeting.
Right there. Okay, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
If there is no more comment on this section from the public, we can move on to informational items, section E. Informational items are transmitted to the Parks and Recreation Commission in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the Commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. Item E1, onboarding new commission members.
So just a brief update to the commission on this item. Earlier in the month, staff from Library and Community Services, at the suggestion of a library commissioner, prepared a similar report, which just sort of gave some outline information and some suggestions that might help with onboarding new commission members, mainly links pointing you towards information that could be useful during your time on the commission, but also a suggestion that perhaps pairing up with a commissioner who's been serving for a while might be an idea worth considering. So we just sort of shifted that idea over to the Parks and Recreation Commission and compiled some resources there, and thought you might find it useful to have. The staff liaison and the staff are always available to answer any specific questions you might have dealing with your work on the commission. But sometimes it's nice to have some pointers on things to explore on your own. So that's the where this report is coming from.
I thought that was a very thoughtful consideration, and I appreciate you putting all that information together. Would we want to take, do we have any comment from the commission on this onboarding process, or this information on onboarding, or the buddy system? Does anyone think it would be a good idea to put together a partner new and an old commission member to sort of connect the old with the new information?
Looks like Commissioner Thomas has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I love the idea of a buddy program. I think it's a great way to get to know other commissioners and what's expected, and like get more context kind of around current issues and issues that have surfaced in the past. So really like the idea.
And to give some context, there were definitely times where we did sort of once a year, we would do either a parks tour, or another time of the year, once a year, we would do sort of, a planning session on our goals and our work stream. And all of these things were done in person. And I felt like that was also a time for us to kind of bond and give some historical context to, and hear new perspectives. So I think this is a way where we can do that in sort of smaller groups as buddies, just to help onboard our new commissioners, and also maybe get some bonding that we used to do too, right?
Any other comments? Do we want to select buddies now, or? being new myself, I'm not 100% certain who's new and who has been on the commission.
Commissioners Diepenbrock and Vice Chair Baskin and Commissioner Payne have been on the commission for a while. Commissioner Bryman, who's not present tonight, has also been on the commission for a while.
Okay, so can we go ahead and select them now? Select teams now? Yeah?
Sure, if you'd like to, yeah.
Okay. Shall we let the new pick or should we let the older commissioners volunteer to, buddy up with someone, however we want to go?
Or you can pick us out of a hat at some point, and maybe we can trust that luck will bring the right people together.
Right.
Madam Chair, if I may, along the lines of what Vice Chair Baskin is saying, that's one role that the staff liaisons could assist with. First of all, everyone on this commission is really great. So, however folks are buddied up, it's going to be awesome. And so we could kind of go offline and just like Vice Chair Baskin says, we can just sort of match folks. If that works for everybody, and we can kind of do that offline and report back next meeting.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you.
Do we have any public or staff liaison? Do we have any public comment on this?
If any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please use that raise hand function in Zoom or *9 on your phone now. I see no public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have some department updates. Is that someone from staff presenting? Section E2.
Yeah, Nick, do you have a slideshow for this one?
I don't, no.
Okay. We want to give you a verbal update then on the topics here in the agenda. On services to seniors, then MPCC updates and kind of revisiting the facility reopening timeline. So maybe we'll tag team on this, Nick. I'll kick it off and you jump in if I'm missing something. So we just want to give you an update on for the seniors. As you know, the senior center closed, first of all, for the pandemic, but now the building has physically been going to be torn down to make room for the new Menlo Park Community Campus. So the plan to provide services to seniors in the interim during construction is to serve them at the Arriaga Family Recreation Center on the Burgess campus. So during the pandemic, the seniors were just being served remotely. Meals were being delivered to their doorstep, and staff was calling them regularly a couple of times a week just to like check in and to make sure they're doing okay. And also giving them some enrichment materials, again, at home and delivery. But earlier this month, on the 12th, we were able to welcome them back in person to actually come and have meals together, like breakfast as well as lunch, get into doing some of the classes that they were accustomed to before, dance and whatnot, as well as, of course, socializing with their friends. And in addition to this activity at the Arriaga Recreation Center, we also have made available one wing of the main library, which we're calling the Senior Annex, which was renovated to provide room for a pool table, which was formerly at the old Senior Center and which a number of the Senior Center users really enjoyed. And that's been a really cool combo, actually. I was skeptical about having a pool table in the library, but it's working out really well. We've had anywhere from 40 to 20 seniors come through on any given day. So that's definitely lower than when the center was in full swing at the old Belhaven location before the pandemic. There'd be upwards of 80 to 100 on a given day. So certainly a dip, not unexpected, with, a number of folks who are still not comfortable coming back because, the pandemic is still a thing and, it's still a risk as well. There is the distance across town. We are continuing to provide transportation services to seniors, a shuttle that will go pick them up at their door and bring them over for seniors who live in Menlo Park. But a number of seniors who do not live in Menlo Park, but use the senior center, that's not an option for them because it's a city shuttle. So we have made arrangements with Peninsula Volunteers, which also serves seniors in San Mateo County, to provide rideshare rides for them provided by Lyft. And we've also connected them to the Samtrans paratransit service. So it's off and running. The staff and the seniors themselves are just thrilled to be back together in person. And we're just really, it's good to see them again because it's been quite isolating for many of the seniors who've been homebound for, a year and a half. And now they have the option to come back and mix it up with their peers. So that's services to seniors. I'll pause there to see if I missed something important that Nick wants to chime in on, or if there are any questions about services to seniors at this time.
I'll just jump in. Oh, sorry, Nick, were you going to say something? I said,
go right ahead.
No, I'm so glad to hear it's back and up and running. I know how much, as you described, people look forward to and benefit from the services that the senior center provided. So I'm glad that there are options back. And it sounds like the transportation options are many, which is great. I'm just wondering how confident we are that all the seniors who were using the center previously are aware of all of those fantastic options.
A high degree of confidence because we've stayed in touch with them throughout the pandemic by either delivering food to their homes or calling them, and in most cases both. So I would have to ask the coordinator for a specific number. We maybe have missed a few who have moved or who we lost touch with, who just lost touch with them and couldn't get them on the phone. But it was very few. So there, awareness is high. That's the question of, is it ready to come back? Is that something that they want to do? And certainly the transportation options are a little different for the folks who don't reside in Menlo Park. And so there's sort of a learning curve there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know some hurdles we can't do much about, but as long as, we've, offered the options and gotten the word out, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was just going to add that some of the classes that were offered to the seniors at the senior center have been on hold during the pandemic, but the staff are planning to bring those back in September, when we're bringing back some of the other recreation classes at the Arriaga Recreation Center. So probably mid to late September is when we're aiming to have those sort of more enrichment classes coming back, conversation classes and art classes and some of the other crafting programs that the seniors were running at the senior center. And then I guess I'll just keep going since I was talking. Just quick update on the Menlo Park Community Campus project. I put in the onboarding report the webpage, the project webpage, and that's a really great place for information on the project. You can even subscribe to get updates sent to you on the project. Just recent work, they've been doing some abatement work, which is where they do sort of safety testing on the materials of the buildings before demolition. There was an idea that came up through the Library Commission of keeping some sort of some part of the old building and incorporating it in the new building. So that was a really good idea that we're hoping to carry forward. There was a giveaway, a community organizational giveaway of all of the equipment and furnishings that we weren't going to either use for interim services or carry over to the new building. That was very successful. So there was some commercial kitchen equipment and things like that, and office equipment that we arranged to give away to neighborhood organizations and nonprofits. And then on June the 19th, we had an open day for the community to come in and take things away to sort of reuse it and get the most sort of reuse out of stuff. And it was very successful. They pretty much cleared out all of the buildings. Right now, the site is no longer being used by staff. It's a construction zone. They're doing some utilities work and some trees work, and they're planning to install a big status sign on site. And they're thinking of beginning the demolition work will probably start mid to late August, and they're hoping to start the construction work sometime in October. So it's moving along really quickly, and pretty soon there'll be visual evidence that a new building is going to rise up there. I wanted to toss over to our recreation supervisor, Todd Zao. He has an update on pickleball and whatever other updates that Todd would like to give. Todd, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So a pickleball update and maybe some room for discussion with that amongst the commissioners. So Nick and I were discussing today. We had a little bit of a delay in getting our agreement signed with our vendor who's going to put down the pickleball lines, but that has been signed, and he has met our maintenance staff member out there and confirmed how they're going to do everything in terms of painting the lines. So the lines will be painted early next week. I think it's on Tuesday the 3rd. And then we also ordered the nets that Peter gave us good info on. So the nets have arrived. So we'll put those up next week as well. And then after the paint dries, we can kind of say that we're ready to open for folks. We have to do a couple things left. And I know Peter's been looking for me to get him the sign information, and I think I'm onto that now in terms of getting it done. We got to install a couple signs, informational signs around Nealon Court 5. So we'll get that language ready in the next probably 2 days. And then the other thing we need to do is notice our current key holders about the changes. So we were thinking that we could really be open as early as August 9th. But then I know that there was discussion within the commission about having some type of opening ceremony. And then Nick and I were discussing, should we hold off on opening and hold the ceremony, do it all at once? Should we have a soft opening and then do a ceremony at some point a little bit, maybe sometime later in the month? So that's where we are with pickleball. The good news is, though, we're basically ready to open within the next 2 weeks or so. So I've been getting calls and emails from folks wondering when it's going to be. So I've been updating them along the way as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Baskin.
Thank you, Todd. Really, really appreciate all your work with this. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to say, but I thank you to Peter. I was able to visit and experience the Peter Diepenbrock, the pickleball club in Palo Alto, and all that is happening there. And I played for 2 hours, and I just have to say that it was awesome. And I was able to see and meet some of the people that have come to our meetings and spoken. And I just want to say it seems like a very vibrant, inclusive, cross-cultural, cross-age, cross-ability sort of game and environment, and very welcoming. I'm going to be honest with you, I've never played doubles pickleball before, and it was awesome. And so I for one, a tennis player, and just super excited about this. And I have to say, if we can bring some of those people over, I know Nealon Park is an attraction as it is, and we've worked so hard. Just some historical context for the commission. We've worked so hard to create just a beautiful all abilities playground, and now to have sort of that tennis court area bring something even new and exciting that will be really inclusive is super exciting. So I guess my one ask is I would love to make a splash and have sort of a nice grand opening. I would not like to hold it up. My recommendation or ask would be that we still, open, do a soft open or do an opening for people to play on it, and then come closer to the end of August when people are back from vacation, kids are back in school and people are kind of in the swing of things and paying attention to what's going on, and maybe have tried it out and we've worked out the kinks there, that we could have some sort of ribbon cutting or special opening to really get the word out. So I think this is it's not, even when we had kind of the ceremony for the bathroom in Jack Lyle, I think this is significant enough and really community building that it's something we should celebrate. So that would just be my ask. Also selfishly, because I will be out of town in the beginning of August. So thanks again for all your hard work on this, Todd. Really appreciate it. And the whole staff team, because I know there's been a lot of surveys and a lot of work done on this.
Yep, there's a whole team doing it. Our maintenance guy, Gary Olson, does a great job in getting everything ready too. So Nick and Sean have both helped out a lot.
Really appreciate everyone's efforts on this. I know everyone has all hands on deck.
Yes, and Madam Chair, if I may add to all of that, and the commission has played a huge role. This was, a service request, that kind of came in through the commission. Hey, can we find a place to do pickleball? This has been going for almost a year now. We started with the pilot project at a pilot court at Kelly Park because it was quick and easy to do that. And it was very clear what the demand was going to be. Folks were really into it, but wanted a more central location. And so with the work of the commission, making it happen, and it's about to become a reality. So, and that's in large part because the commission providing that forum for community members to say, hey, we want to do this. And then regarding like a ceremony, I agree. I think, this is a great addition to Nealon Park and to the community, but also, first week of August, second week of August, it's like a little bit of a ghost town and folks are all on vacation or whatnot. So I think to Vice Chair Vaskin's point, maybe more toward the end of August or maybe even the beginning of September, and a little more time to plan it. I note that the first, September 1st is a Wednesday. So, and I know that Wednesdays, I don't know what everyone's Wednesdays are like, but that's one date that kind of comes to mind. So we can maybe work offline to try to figure out a date to do some kind of opening. But if that general time frame, the end of August, beginning of September, seems fitting for commissioners to attend, because I think we'd really want the commissioners there if you're available, then we can look for a date. We can maybe work with the chair and vice chair to kind of figure that out.
And I can ask the Chamber of Commerce if I can borrow their giant scissors. So they're always a big hit and get the giant ceremonial scissors. I love those.
We already got a pair, Nick. We're ready.
Oh, wow. See, I should know.
And this would also give us a little more time to engage the mayor and the city council, who I think would also want to participate. Thanks for that update, Todd. Well, maybe we can just give a very quick update on reopening. So just a reminder to the commission that the city council did authorize a 4-phase reopening plan that stretches over several months, and it's online at menlopark.org/reopening. It certainly has asterisks by it because it's always subject to change depending on the course of the pandemic. Right now, we're still on track with that schedule, but the Delta variant and the increase in cases is, a little bit of a concern. So we just want to keep our eyes on that. You've probably heard some updates and guidance from the CDC and even locally here in the county about, even vaccinated people wearing masks and things of that nature. So just, it's a reminder that we're still in the midst of the pandemic. So how that may affect our reopening schedule, not clear yet. We're not to the point where that would change. But I did want to note that, right now it was tentative that public bodies like the commission could potentially resume in-person meetings in September. That's still what's on the schedule. But just note that that could be pushed out. We'll see. Also, a couple other things that are moving forward on track is reactivating the gymnastics program, something the city council directed staff last month to come back with a proposal to do that. And so that is tentatively coming back to this commission next month to have a first look at the gymnastics reopening plan, and then the city council September 14th. So we're very excited about that. And I know many community members are excited about having gymnastics return to Menlo Park. So just a couple things to put on your radar there. That's kind of the current status with reopening. Thank you. Oh, happy to answer any questions, of course.
That's it for our updates, Chair Brosnan.
Okay, thank you, Nick, Sean, and Todd. Are there any other questions from the commission? Nick, any comments from the public?
Anyone like to make a comment on that item on the department updates? Just use that raise hand feature in the Zoom screen or *9 on your phone. I do not see any comments.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so next we are moving on to commissioner reports, which I'm scheduled to give this week or this month. I thought I might just tell you a bit about myself and a bit more about my background. Whilst I'm a fairly new resident to Menlo Park, I've been a guest of family friends here for a couple of decades, so have often stayed here whenever I've come back from my visits to the US over the last decade or so. So it's very homey, second homey to me. And my family's been in the Bay Area for several more decades. So I'm very excited to be a part of this commission now and get to know the community. I've spent the last year getting to know a lot of the community, I think almost more so than any other city I've ever lived in. It's been very warm and welcoming, and I think it's a great place. So I'm, being able to serve in a volunteer capacity is really exciting to me. In terms of my history, work history, and what I hope to bring to the commission is that whilst I haven't been a government employee, I have worked in a government agency for a state abroad. And I managed the essential services in remote areas. So I had a portfolio of over 500 projects and a budget comparable to the city's budget, and had a lot of community engagement involved in my role as we were building these services for Indigenous people, the Aboriginal Australian people. It's sometimes very challenging, put on the spot, and very rewarding to be able to help people. And so I feel good about coming back into a role working with the public. Aside from the essential services, I implemented a lot of data analytics projects for big organizational changes in both the public and the private sector. And looked at ways and processes that existed and looked at how to use technology to help those organizations run smarter, more efficiently. So that is something that I hope that I can ultimately, bring to help the city and the people in it. Aside from my personal experience in business operations, I have an interest in the fabric that underpins building communities. So the things that we don't necessarily look at when we're running day-to-day business. So arts, and I think that moving forward, I'll be interested in this commission in looking at how I can help to develop the arts community in this city. One, just a quick example, and Sean has heard this before because you were at the meeting, and probably David as well, the city council meeting, but one of the personal or work experiences that I had that highlighted how important parks and recreation can be to a community, after hearing a fair share of Amy Poehler jokes over the last month or so from my friends, was that in that essential services role, there were a couple of partnerships we had with other departments, and one of them was to build swimming pools for Aboriginal communities in very remote areas, which often were laden with a complex array of social issues due to transportation, heat, essential services shortages, power outages, lack of employment, a lot of problems. When a swimming pool was built in one of the communities, the truancy rate was almost nil after implementing a no school, no pool policy. In these communities, it gets to be 110, 120 degrees in the summer. So it was of great interest to children to go to school if they weren't going to be able to, allowed to go to the pool afterwards. And of the billions of dollars that went into this program, the swimming pool projects are the ones that stood out to me the most and seemed to be the most effective in terms of addressing a whole host of issues that were seemingly unrelated. It also had some unintended positive consequences, like curing some health issues in children who were in the pool, in chlorinated water frequently, and eliminating some of those problems as well. So I think there's a bit of my heart that's in parks and recreation as well. So I look forward to working with everyone and getting to know everyone, especially once we can start meeting and, breaking the ice and learning more about each other and what we can do together. There's that. And then aside from my personal report, my commissioner's report, Sean and Nick and I had discussed how we want to move, if we want to change the format moving forward of the commissioner's reports, which for the benefit of everyone, I think historically, as it's been explained to me, has been in a format where one commissioner provides a report on any particular topic that's of interest to them each month. But we could look at any other way that we want to do this. If there is a certain area of interest that each commissioner has in terms of parks and recreation, and would like to give a monthly update on those topics, we could do that, or we could leave it as is. If anyone has suggestions now, we could talk about it now, or if you want to give it some thought and we could resume the discussion next month, we could do that as well. Any comments?
I think it would be worth putting on the agenda and just kind of brainstorming what we think would be the most helpful for the group or informative, or what we think it would look like. And we could maybe also talk about it in, with our buddy and whenever that system starts, and then kind of come back once it's agendized and discuss what the brainstorming was. I think it'd be a good idea to revisit. It does kind of seem a little unstructured at this point. So it'd be good to make it work for all of us moving forward.
I like the idea of individual commissioners really identifying the areas where they are really interested, the things that they are passionate about, for the purposes just of understanding how they want to contribute to the commission. And I know we all have different passions, and I think that would be a very good thing to do. And we could, we could do it either through staff or some sort of document that would circulate where, we can simply articulate what those are. And then as these issues come up, take that role of presenting a report on either the status of something or where we'd like to see things go in the future.
Okay, so we'll buddy up, look at those areas, come back, brainstorm, come back next month to discuss. Meanwhile, do we want to keep the format as is and select someone or have someone volunteer to give a commissioner's report in the next meeting?
Madam Chair, if I may, maybe the time that would ordinarily go to that would be time spent on kind of discussing. It sounds like I'm hearing there's interest in revisiting the format and maybe trying some different things. So maybe rather than program something in now, maybe use that time, this time on the agenda next month for that discussion, if that meets with everyone else's kind of agreement. And this is maybe a segue to, since we're talking about next month's calendar, I think we skipped over just a review of next month's agenda calendar, which was the previous item on the agenda. So it might be good to transition into that when you're ready.
I was actually thinking that, Sean, as I was saying.
Great.
Investing it, so I think that sounds great.
Yes, I'll just note for the commission that there's a good number of things on there for August. And tonight we added a follow-up on the Aquatics program. And then this discussion about commissioner reports. So we have a couple of presentations that are relevant to the commission's work. I think between the chair, vice chair, and the staff, we can kind of look into maybe some agenda management and try to assess the amount of time. And certainly the gymnastics program reactivation is something we would really prioritize, that we really want that to happen next month, just because the timing and when to open it. So, but again, adding to those 4 that we see there is the Aquatics follow-up report, and then the commissioner reports format. I think that's all doable, but I just want to put that out there. That's a pretty full agenda.
And one housekeeping item. I may have either not received or accidentally deleted any sort of agenda planning meetings. Oh. So that it could totally be my fault. But just when Sean mentioned that, I realized, oh gosh, I don't think I see them. So if you could just add me in whenever that is. Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's my fault. I will definitely add you back in, Vice Chair Baskin.
I have lost my screen, my visual.
Well, as the commission knows, this is really just to give a look ahead. And this section of the agenda is helpful just from sort of the Brown Act perspective, because it gives commissioners the opportunity to either, just kind of quickly comment on something that's listed here, current issue relevant to the commission's work, because technically on the agenda in this format. And also to suggest, oh, hey, there's this area that I'm really interested in, or I've heard a lot from the community about, when can we talk about this? And then you can kind of, start to plug it in here. So that's really the purpose of this agenda item.
Okay. So I'm just looking at the document that I've pulled up in another window because I've lost the video for some reason. But is what we have there the new public park on Facebook property, the Chamber of Commerce Community Economic Developments event, gymnastics, and advisory body report to the City Council?
Correct.
Okay.
And then tonight we added the 2 additional things.
Okay. Is there any comment from the commissioners? Okay. And do we take public comment on this section?
This part is just sort of agenda planning. I don't think we normally take public comment on it.
Okay. And do we need to move to approve this agenda?
You can approve by acclamation. It's not something you have to vote on.
Right, it's just an informational item, so no action is needed.
Okay. Well, I think if there's no other input, then we can approve it by acclamation.
All right, so approved. And then since I think we've already done the commissioner reports, over to you, Chair Brosnan, for adjournment, unless there are any other comments from the commission.
Okay, if there are no other comments from the commission, then we can adjourn the meeting at 8:31 p.m.
Thank you,
all for hanging
everybody.
in there. It was
Thank
a very
you.
long meeting. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.